Hello all of you. Now let's start with customs duty. Now customs duty, as you know, is consisting of only 25 marks, and as you can see the module, it's quite big. Okay, so volume is big but marks are less. Hence what you have to do is justify the marks with the volume, so you have to study a little bit faster, a little bit less depth. I'll tell you which chapters to study in depth, and the remaining chapters are purely theoretical, purely procedural, so you have to go horizontal, means multiple readings but on the surface. Okay, so with that in mind, let's start. So the historical background and all you don't have to study. This is all rubbish basically. They are just given for introduction, that if anyone wants to understand by himself, then he can read these topics. The historical background, customs, basically word has come from tradition, that's what is given here, and the whole history is being mentioned here, that what happened in the past 5000 years back, and then what, and then what, and then what. So all rubbish you have to forget. Okay, to be very frank. All these are rubbish things, academic interest but not of any practical use. Then straight away come to the next topic, nature of customs duties. Here comes the important point, the legal point that we have to study. Entry number 83. This is the we have already discussed in GST the constitutional provisions and validity and all those things. So entry number 83 of the union list of the 7th schedule of the constitution gives the right to the parliament to charge customs duties, and customs duty includes the import duty as well as export duty. So the event of taxation of customs is import or export, as the case may be. Remember this point. Event of taxation, like in GST the event of taxation was supply, so here it is import or export, as the case may be. Now what is import and what is export, that is what we are going to study. So therefore it is given that thus import and export duty is a union subject. Union means the central government's subject, and power to levy is derived from constitution. Then section 12 of the Customs Act is the charging section. Provides that duty of customs shall be levied at such rates as may be specified under the Customs Tariff Act of 1975. So remember that there are two basic acts here. One is the Customs Act, which gives the full procedure of import, export and everything, and second act is the Customs Tariff Act of 1975, which gives the schedules of rates of tax. And there are two schedules therein. One is schedule 1, which is giving the basic customs duty rate for importation, schedule 1, and schedule 2 gives the rate of export duties. So schedule 1 is import duty rates, schedule 2 is export duty rates. Okay, so there are two schedules. So therefore it is given the brief points that section 12 provides for import as well as exports. The rate of duty will be as specified under the Customs Tariff Act of 1975, read with the relevant exemption notifications. Yeah, here also there are exemption notifications like we have seen in GST, and those exemptions have to be taken into consideration. Then import duty is levied on almost all items, while export duty is levied only on a few limited products where Indian goods are in a commanding position. And raising revenue for the central government is the main but not the only purpose of the Customs Act. Now sometimes they may ask this one. Okay, I have not told you before we go ahead. Let me tell you how the questions come in exam on Customs Act. Customs Act is the same old act. So we can see the trend for the past 10-15 papers, and the trend is that very small questions and direct questions come in customs. One is the valuation based question, which is on valuation chapter that we'll see later on, and types of custom duties. So that is one question which comes, practical question for around 5 marks. The balance 20 mark question will be small pinpoint questions. pinpointed questions, very small, 2 marks each, 2 to 3 marks maximum, will be very small questions, around 8 to 10 questions, okay, and one practical problem on valuation. So that is how the questions are asked. Therefore I said that you have to study everything and lot of times, and the procedures you have to just remember them, okay. So here it says, this is one technical point, that what is the purpose of customs duty or customs act, you can say. So one thing is the collection of revenue for the government, but it is also used to restrict imports, that is to safeguard the Indian industry from foreign competition. So customs act is used for that also. So for that purpose what we do is we levy extraordinarily high duties on importation to protect the domestic industry. So make importation so costly by levying additional duties that it does not compete with the local Indian made goods. So restrict imports, and then there are prohibitions also. We will see a section which prohibits the importation. There are two ways of controlling imports. One is extraordinary duties, exorbitant duties to increase the cost of import. Number two, strictly prohibit their import. Don't allow the import at all. So that also is there. Customs Act gives the power to the central government to issue prohibitions also. So there are restrictions and there are prohibitions, both. So restrict imports to conserve foreign exchange and also to protect the Indian industry, you can say. And protect Indian industry, second point is given, from world competition. Then prohibit import export of goods as per government policy, like arms and munitions and all. You cannot allow them to be openly imported into India. And also to regulate exports, like for example food products. If food grains and food stuff is easily exported out of India, then there will be a shortfall in India, leading to increase in prices and inflation and all. So we can regulate exports also. So normally exports of food grains and other stuff is also restricted and prohibited by the government. Then components of customs law are given. So customs law is comprised by, means what all things are there in customs law. Law is a wider term, so it consists of acts, it consists of rules, regulations, notifications, circulars, procedures, everything. Everything taken together is called as law. So it says customs law consists of, number one, the Customs Act of 1962. So it says customs law is governed by Customs Act of 1962. It came into force with effect from 1st of February 1963. This is a historical point, no need to remember. It extends to the whole of India, including the designated areas in the continental shelf and exclusive economic zone, that is up to 200 nautical miles. Notified by the Ministry of External Affairs from time to time. And the Customs Act has 161 sections distributed over 17 chapters. Do you have to remember these points for exam? No. These are general knowledge points. Then there is Customs Tariff Act, which gives, I just told you, it gives the rates of tax. So first is the Customs Act, which defines the whole procedure of import export. And next is Customs Tariff Act, which consists of two schedules. Schedule 1 gives the import duty rates, and Schedule 2 gives the export duty rates. And it also provides for levy of some duties, additional duties. Additional duty, preferential duty, anti-dumping duty, protective duty, etc., etc. There are lots of other duties. Those we'll see in this lecture itself after some time. Then there are rules and there are regulations. Rules are made by the central government. As we saw in GST, there are several rules. So in customs also there are rules. Rules are made by the central government, and it defines procedures. And regulations are also procedures, but they are made by the department, that is the board. And the board was earlier called as Central Board of Excise and Customs. Now excise is gone, so they have changed the name to CBIC. So wherever you will read this word CBEC, now you convert it to CBIC. CBIC stands for Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. I don't know why they have separately used the word custom. Custom is also included in indirect tax. So they should have changed the name to Central Board of Indirect Taxes. That's it. Like you have Central Board for direct taxes, Central Board for indirect tax. There was no need for the word custom separately, but they have included it. And that distinction is given. Distinction between rules and regulations is that authority to make rules is with the government, whereas the regulations are made by the board. Both are procedures, but rules is a high level procedure and regulations are the hardcore level procedures, like what is to be done exactly in a particular case, the format of the returns, the format of the different documents and all, that is decided by the board, CBIC. So wherever you will find this word CBEC, now you can change it to CBIC. And rules have to be placed before Parliament, while regulations are not required to be so placed. However, it may be noted that both rules and regulations have statutory force. This is important. Both have statutory force, both have the force of law. Means they are considered as law itself. Court will have to follow them. Now the actual law starts, so now you focus. Okay. Up till now there was only introductory part. Now let's see. Basic custom duty is the duty which is levied under section 12 of the Customs Act, which is also called as a charging section. So the duty is called as basic customs duty, or you can say the principal duty, the main duty of customs is called as basic customs duty. And it is levied on a percentage of value determined under 14(1). So section 14 is the valuation section. It is a valuation section, so we will see that also in detail. There is a whole chapter on valuation. And the rate of duties are specified in column 4 of the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act. Now this is for import duty, and for export duty it will be second schedule. Okay, it will be second schedule. Then there is a very interesting point here. Preferential rate of duty. Understand the concept first, then it will become very simple for you. Preferential rate duty. What this means? Preferential rate duty is nothing but basic customs duty only. It is BCD only, but it is a lesser rate of BCD which is applied on goods imported from certain countries who are declared as preferential areas in respect of those goods. So it's very simple. For example, let's take example of Apple, not the mobile company, the real apples which we eat. Okay. Now India enters into an agreement with, say, the US, in which these are trade agreements. So in which we allow apples to be imported from US at a concessional rate of import duty. In return, they will allow our mangoes to be imported in US at a concessional rate of duty. So these are bilateral trade agreements. Okay. So what happens here is that the government gives concession in order to receive concession. They are hence called as bilateral. Bilateral means both parties, both the countries will give some concessions to each other's goods to promote trade, basically. So if a lot of apples are being imported from US and a lot of Indian mangoes are exported to US, then both the governments will sit together and say that okay, let's promote this business. So in this, suppose apples are imported in India normally and they are chargeable to, say, 10% import duty. The government of India will say okay, US is a good partner and let's give them some concession. So we'll say that okay, any apple which is originated in US, means grown in US and imported into India, will be charged at 5% duty instead of 10. In return, the US government will give some concession in their import duty rate for mangoes, the Indian mangoes. So it goes like this. Okay, understood the concept? Now, how this is formalized, how this is put in law. So, in the Customs Tariff Act, you have the schedule 1 for import duty rate, schedule 2 for export duty rates, right? Now, in the schedule is nothing but a table of rates. So, there are two columns for rates. In the schedule 1, there are two columns for rates. One is the normal rate of import duty, and the second column, fourth column is the normal rate, fifth column is the preferential area rate. Now, this preferential area rate is not mentioned for all the goods, but it is mentioned where the government intends to give such preference. Okay. So, for whatever product the government intends to give preference, they will write the preferential area rate also. So, if the normal rate is say 10, 12, 15, the preferential area rate will be something lesser than that, obviously. Okay. Now, just by mentioning the rate is not enough. Now, for this goods, like the goods were mentioned as apple, the description of goods was apple, then there is the whole code number, the HSN code is there, then description is apple, and against that the normal rate is say 10%, preferential area rate is 5%. Now, what the government has to do is, government has to issue a notification to prescribe any country as a preferential area for these goods. So, then government will issue a notification, and that notification they will specify USA as a country for the purpose of preferential duty in case of apple. Once this is done, now the goods that were imported from US, apples, will be chargeable at 5%. But again, one condition is there, that it has to be proved that the goods have originated in that country. Otherwise, what will do? That if you import apples from Brazil, you are paying 10%. So, what you will do? You will first export apples from Brazil to USA, and then you will bring it from USA. And once you bring it from USA, you will say that we are entitled for concessional rate, preferential rate. So, no. So, what you have to do is bring a certificate of origin from the department, the tax department of that country. You have to get a certificate of origin. You have to prove that the goods have originated in USA. So, we have to prove that the apples have grown in USA. Okay. So, that is how this concept operates. Understood fully? Preferential area rate. Now, just study it. So, it says the customs tariff has 5 columns. There is heading number, subheading number, description, standard rate, and preferential rate. So, standard rate column is 4, preferential rate column is 5, fifth column. If the goods are imported from areas notified by the central government for each goods, the notification is separately for separate goods. So, for apple, suppose we have notified USA, for bananas we have specified Brazil, for some other goods, steel goods, we have specified Japan. So, it is like that. It is up to the government to announce any area as a preferential area for particular goods. Okay. Then the rate of duty under column 5 will be applicable. Instead of column 4, you will have to apply column 5 rate. The government may by notification under section 25. So, this notification is issued under section 25. Okay. 25 is the exemption section. After all, concession is also exemption, na? It is a part exemption. Concession is a part exemption. Exemptions can be full, exemptions can be part. So, concession is a part exemption. So, this notification is issued under section 25. Prescribe preferential area rate of duty in respect of imports from certain preferential areas. Conditions are, now this question can come, what are the conditions for availing preferential rate of duty? So, it says the importer will have to fulfill the following conditions to make the imported goods eligible for preferential rate. Number 1, at the time of importation, he should make a specific claim for preferential rate. So, you have to make a specific claim. Where? In the bill of entry. So the bill of entry that you file, bill of entry means the document that you file, the importer files. He has to make a claim that I want to claim preferential area rate. Then he should also claim that the goods are produced or manufactured in such preferential area. Origin. This is what I was talking about. The origin has to be proved. Then the area should be notified under section 4.3 of the Customs Tariff Act to be a preferential area. A notification has to be issued by the government. And the origin of the goods shall be determined in accordance with rules made under 4.2 of the Customs Tariff Act. So specific rules are also made, rules for determination of place of origin. Then if the importer fails to fulfill these conditions, the goods shall be liable at the standard rate of duty, यानी कि full rate. Then you have got additional duty of customs. And this is the old one, section 3.1 of the Customs Tariff Act. Now let me explain the logic to you first. Logic goes very simple, that if you import goods into India, one is the domestic goods. Domestic goods means goods which are produced, manufactured in India. And sold in India. Second is the imported goods. Okay. So in case of domestic manufactured or produced goods, you used to charge excise duty on all the goods first, and now still some goods are still there on which excise duty is chargeable. Okay. Excise duty can be state excise, central excise, as the case may be. And on imported goods there was no excise duty. Why? Because under the Excise Act, we have not studied it, but as it was there earlier, under the Excise Act it was mentioned that goods should be produced or manufactured in India, then only excise duty is chargeable. So if the goods are imported, foreign manufactured goods are imported into India, the manufacturing process has happened outside India, so therefore no excise duty was charged. So as there is excise duty on domestic goods and no excise duty on imported goods, obviously these will be cheaper. And secondly, there is a mismatch, there is injustice to the Indian goods. Indian goods will cry that why the duty on us and not on the imported goods? Why should we be taxed? Why should boys have all the fun? So why should the imported goods have the fun of no excise duty and we are charged with excise duty? So government says, wait, we'll do justice. There is no excise duty under the Excise Act. Okay, no excise duty under Excise Act, but we will charge it separately. How? Under Customs Act. So there is no excise duty under Excise Act, but to countervail this duty which is charged on domestic goods, countervail means to bring them at par. So this is subject to excise duty, this is not. So to countervail that, to bring balance, we will charge additional duty. Additional duty under section 3.1 of Customs Tariff Act is imposed to bring them at par. So hence that is called as countervailing. To countervail means to bring them at par. So we charge additional duty which is at the rate of excise duty on like goods produced or manufactured in India. So suppose I am importing a mobile phone. So we'll see that if a mobile phone is manufactured in India, how much excise duty is payable. That much excise duty, that rate of excise duty would be charged here as additional duty. So therefore this is called as CVD of excise, countervailing duty of excise. Understood? Now we are still studying this because there are few goods which are left under excise even now. So those goods which are left under excise, means on which excise duty is chargeable in India, will be subject to this additional duty at the time of its importation. Understood? So let's see what's written there. Okay. Actually, wait a second. I'll explain one more point. I'll explain 4 points here together, and then we'll see all of them together. So this was countervailing duty of excise. Okay. Then there was VAT applicable on domestic goods which are produced and sold. There was VAT on sales earlier. But since this is import, the sale took place from outside India. Sale is from outside India to India. So when the sale was from outside India to India, import sale, there was no VAT on them directly. There was no VAT on under the VAT laws. There was no VAT applicable under VAT laws. So again there was a mismatch. There was injustice to Indian goods. So therefore, to countervail this, government had imposed, so but, I'll again write but is very important, but they charged special additional duty called as SAD under section 3(5) of Customs Tariff Act. So they charged SAD. SAD was charged at a fixed rate of 4%. Reason was that VAT depends upon sales, depend upon states, because VAT was a state subject. Each state could have their own rate of VAT on a particular goods. So if those goods were imported into India, what rate should we apply? Suppose Maharashtra charges 16% VAT on these goods. Andhra Pradesh charges only 2% VAT. And Tamil Nadu charges 1%. Goa charges 3%. Somebody charges 4%, somebody charges 5%. So due to different rates applicable throughout India in different states, the government said that okay, we will not follow the VAT rates because we don't know what rate to follow because there are so many rates. So therefore we will fix it at 4%. So it was a fixed rate of 4%. But excise duty, the countervailing duty of excise was not fixed. It depends upon the excise duty rate on like goods in India. Okay. So 3135. Then when both of these were replaced by GST, when they are replaced by GST, so GST also has to be countervailed. So for GST countervailing, section 3(7) has been imposed. That is, we will charge IGST, Integrated Goods and Service Tax, on importation of goods which are chargeable to GST in India. So if your goods are chargeable to GST in India and if you import them, then you have to pay IGST on its import. And why IGST? Because import transaction comes under interstate transaction. Import is considered as interstate. Export is also considered as interstate, remember? So as importation is considered as interstate, therefore IGST would be charged under section 3(7). So this is countervailing of GST. And similarly, if compensation cess, GST compensation cess, state compensation cess is imposed on the goods in India, then that will also be countervailed on imported goods. So for that there is section 3(9). GST compensation cess imposed on imported goods as well. So understood, there are 4 countervailings which are done. Countervailing of excise, countervailing of VAT, countervailing of GST, countervailing of GST compensation cess. So depending upon what applies in India, we will countervail it. Understood? So all these 4 points are now explained there. Let's see. So first we'll start with 3(1). It is imposed only on goods which are manufactured outside India and imported into India. It is in addition to basic customs duty. It doesn't replace basic customs duty, okay? It is in addition to basic customs duty. So first you will charge basic custom duty, then you will charge additional duty again. And the important point is that basic custom duty becomes part of value for charging additional duty. Means if the import is at 100 and the basic custom duty rate is say 10%, so first you will add 10, that is basic custom duty, then you add up both, so this becomes 110, and then you apply the additional duty. So if additional duty is say 12%, that 12% will be of not just 100 but 110. I am assuming 12%. If it is at 12%, it will be 12% of 110, means basic custom duty becomes part of value for charging additional duty. 110 into 12%. So this will be 13.2. Understood? Then rate of duty. As I told you, rate of duty will be the applicable excise duty rate. So it says it is equal to the excise duty for the time being leviable on like article if produced or manufactured in India. And if the like article is not so produced or manufactured in India, then duty would be leviable on the class or description of article to which the imported article relates. Means it will not be left. Like for example, computer chips, the IC chips. IC chips are not manufactured in India. We import it from US, etc., China, Intel, AMD. All these processor chips are imported into India. But they will also be subject to this duty, countervailing duty of excise. Now you say that there is nobody in India to suffer any damage because there is no industry in India. Then why to charge? Then why to charge countervailing duty? So government says no. The purpose of countervailing is not just to bring the goods at par, but to collect revenue for the government. So whether Indian goods are taxable or not, whether whether India produces those goods or not, the countervailing duty shall be applicable. We need to collect money for the government. Come on. So therefore it is given that even if it is not produced or manufactured in India, we will still charge the additional duty, considering the class or description of articles to which the imported article belongs. Then if like article are chargeable at different rates under excise, then CVD will be leviable at the highest of such rates. Means if there are 3 rates of excise duty on any particular goods given the description, like for example, excise duties are chargeable at different rates depending upon various factors, like for example the places where it is manufactured. So if the excise duty on particular goods was at 24% if produced in urban area in India and 12% if produced in a rural area, then if you import the goods, it will be chargeable at the highest rate, 24%, highest of such rates. Then in case of alcoholic liquor was not subject to central excise, so you will not get the rate under central excise. Alcoholic liquor was chargeable to state excise, and each state might have a different excise duty rate. So then what to follow, which rate to apply for imported alcohol? So it says that the government will issue a notification for this purpose specifying the rate at which the countervailing duty is to be charged, and that rate would depend upon the rates followed by different states. So government will study what is the rate of excise followed in different states, and then they will prescribe a rate for imported alcohol, and then the imported alcohol will be charged to additional duty at that prescribed rate. So that is given there. Then in case of alcoholic liquor imported into India, the central government may specify the rate. Central government may specify the rate of additional duty having regard to the excise duty rates in different states. Or if like alcoholic liquor is not produced or manufactured in any state, then having regard to excise duty rates in different states. Then value, as I told you, value will be the import value plus the basic custom duty thereon. So it says excise duty chargeable in value, the CVD will be CVD means countervailing duty shall be calculated on aggregate of the value as computed under section 14.1, that is transaction value, we'll study in valuation chapter, or 14.2, that is tariff value of the Customs Act and basic customs duty and basic customs duty. So it will be value plus BCD, aggregate it, and on that you charge the rate of CVD. Then there's another point given there, that if excise duty is chargeable on MRP basis, but you cut it off, because all those goods which were chargeable at an MRP basis, there was a concept of MRP based excise duty, but that all those goods are now covered under GST. So that concept is gone, it's dead. So it's dead, so you cut it off. Then this is a customs duty, even if rate of excise is considered for calculation purpose. So for all law purposes, this is a customs duty. Okay. So if you want to claim refund, or the government wants to collect it from you, coercive procedure, this, that, Customs Act will be followed. The provisions of the Customs Act will apply. Then comes that SAD, section 3.5. So that is also simple. It is levied to countervail the effect of sales tax, local taxes and other charges for the time being leviable on like article on sale, purchase or transportation in India. And if that article is not so sold or purchased or transported, then we'll see the class to which it belongs and what is the duty on that class of goods. And where they are chargeable at different rates, we'll take the highest rate. Then rate of duty, as I told you, will be notified by the government, but they have notified it at 4%. So that's given there, notification number 53 by 2017, SAD leviable on following goods at 4% with effect from 1/7/17. So now only these goods are left in this, and as you can see, these goods are those goods which are not chargeable to GST. So therefore they are left here. Petroleum crude, motor spirit, that is petrol, HSD, aviation turbine fuel, and liquefied natural gas and natural gas. So these are left. All other goods have gone under GST. So those goods which have gone under GST, they are out of 3.1 as well as 3.5. Both of these duties will not be levied. Instead, what will levy? 3.7 and 3.9. Okay. So that is explained here also in note, that due to introduction of GST, the applicability of additional duty of custom is very limited, and GST is levied on all supplies of goods and or services except supply of liquor and for human consumption. Further, GST on supply of petroleum crude and all these shall be levied with effect from such date as may be notified by the government. Thus, additional duty of custom will be levied only on few products not leviable to GST right now. So this is very simple. Then next duty is integrated tax. This is very important because integrated tax is nothing but countervailing of the GST which is levied on like goods in India. So let me explain the background of this. It's very simple. What do you mean by countervailing duty basically? Countervailing means to bring at par, to countervail, to counter in simple words. So what happens is that if we manufacture and sell goods in India, means if the supply is in India, then it is chargeable to GST, right? If it is intrastate, then it is chargeable to central government GST, means CGST, Central Goods and Service Tax, plus the SGST or the UTGST if it is in a union territory. And if it is interstate, if the supply is interstate from one state to another, then it is applicable to IGST, right? And in few cases there is a compensation cess also, state compensation cess, which is of no use practically. Now, if the goods are imported into India, if the goods are imported into India, then the supply practically is outside India. Goods come to India, but supply takes place from outside India. So are we going to apply the GST laws to supply which takes place outside India? No. Now in the first place, I'll tell you that import into India is considered as interstate supply under the IGST Act, which you might have studied before this. If you have studied that chapter before this, I hope you have completed your GST. If not, then don't worry, you will complete it later on. Either ways, it's quite simple. First of all, you must understand that under the IGST Act, import of goods into India is considered as interstate supply. Okay, but since the origin of supply is from outside India, so therefore government has not charged IGST on import of goods into India, but indirectly they have charged this IGST in the form of additional customs duty. So we are doing the same thing, we are charging the money, but not under the IGST Act, it is charged under the Customs Act. That's the only difference. So the money goes to the government, the same amount which would have been collected under IGST Act, the same amount is collected, but under Customs Tariff Act. That's the only difference. So Customs Tariff Act section 3 subsection 7 says that when the goods are imported into India, you will have to pay additional customs duty which is equal to the IGST leviable on such or like goods when supplied in India. Okay, so what we do is we charge additional duty of customs. It is called as additional duty of customs, commonly known as integrated tax, which is equal to IGST on like goods if supplied in India. Means here whatever IGST is applicable on these goods, like for example if we talk about television sets, so if if a television set is supplied in India, if suppose the IGST sorry, if suppose the IGST would have been chargeable at 18%, just an example, then here also we'll apply the same 18%. If here it would have been charged at 12%, then here also it will be charged at 12%. Understood? So whatever is the IGST rate on local supplies, that will be applied on imported goods also to bring them at par. Okay, otherwise Indian goods will feel bad because they are charged with this duty and the imported goods are not charged with that duty. That's not possible. So government says, okay, we'll charge the same duty on imported goods also, and this will be in addition to the normal customs duty. Means the BCD that we have already seen. So BCD will apply, all other custom duties will apply, and on that we'll also charge IGST. Understood? And why IGST? Why not CGST, SGST separately? Because this is considered as interstate supply. All import and export transactions are considered as interstate supplies. Means they are governed by IGST and not by central and state GSTs separately. Okay, good. So then what is the value on which it is to be charged? That we'll see. So see what it says. Any article which is imported into India shall, in addition means apart from the normal customs duties, it will also be liable to integrated tax at such rate not exceeding 40%, because IGST Act also says not exceeding 40%, as is leviable under section 5 of IGST Act of 2017 on like article on its supply in India. on the value of imported article as determined under subsection 8 or 8A. So that we'll see how the value is to be determined. But this point you understood now? It will be chargeable at the same rate at which IGST is chargeable on local supplies in India. Okay. But what will be the value? So let's see. Subsection 8 says value for levy of integrated tax would be aggregate of the value of imported article as determined under section 14(1), that is called as the transaction value of the Customs Act 1962, the same value on which we are going to charge the custom duty, or tariff value fixed under section 14(2), as the case may be. In customs there is a concept of tariff value, means where the value will be fixed by the government, like it applies in case of oil and other imports. The government fixes the value on which the duty is to be charged. So we don't charge duty on your actual import price, but we charge the duty on the value as determined by the government and notified. So if the government has notified, say, 30 rupees value for any product, then duty will always be charged on 30, even if you import at 27 or at 35. So your 27 or 35 will not be considered. Whatever value is fixed by the government will be used for calculation of duty. So that is called as tariff value. So if government has fixed tariff value for our products, then we'll take tariff value. If tariff value is not fixed, then we have to take the transaction value. Transaction value 14(1) means the actual import price. Transaction value means actual import price. Tariff value means fixed price. Okay, that's quite simple. Then we'll understand in detail when we'll go to valuation chapter. So we have to take the value, either or, whatever is there, and duty of customs. Duty of customs chargeable under section 12 of the Customs Act 1962 means the BCD, basic custom duty. Section 12 means the basic custom duty that we saw just now, basic custom duty, and any sum chargeable on that article under any law for the time being in force as an addition to and in the same manner as duty of customs. So any other duty which is chargeable under customs as if a duty of custom. So it will include all types of duties that we are going to see in this chapter. First we'll see the basic duties, and then we'll see the auxiliary duties also, like anti-dumping duty and subsidy duty, and lot of them we'll see. Section 6, 8, 8C8 and all those 9. So this integrated tax is to be charged on value plus basic custom duty and all other duties of customs. All other duties of customs which are in addition to the basic custom duty. You add everything, all types of custom duties, including some surcharge and cess that we'll see. Everything you add, and then on that aggregate you will charge finally at the last the integrated tax. Okay, so integrated tax will not be just on transaction value, it will be on transaction value plus all types of custom duties, all custom duties. Okay, but does not include the integrated tax itself, obviously, because we need the value before integrated tax and not inclusive of integrated tax. So but not include integrated tax referred to under subsection 7 means this integrated tax itself, or the GST compensation cess referred to under subsection 9. So like we have GST compensation cess in India, so if the same goods are imported into India, we will countervail both the integrated tax as well as the GST compensation cess. So countervailing of GST compensation cess is similar to countervailing the IGST. It is on same lines, absolutely same lines. But for levy of integrated tax, we are not going to include these two, that is integrated tax itself and compensation cess. But all other custom duties are to be included. Remember, we'll see a problem. You'll understand. Then value where the goods deposited in a warehouse. Next is an interesting point. Goods deposited in a warehouse under the provisions of the Customs Act 1962 are sold to any person before clearance for home consumption or export under the said act. Now this you have to understand first what this means. This is a case where let me explain you in brief what is this warehousing concept. Here is the port or the airport or the land customs station where the goods come, okay, in the first place. So goods are lying here. When the goods are lying on the port airport, you can either clear them for home consumption, means you pay the duty and clear them. Home consumption means clearance in India. Clearance in the landmass is called as home consumption. Or the second alternative is you can put the goods in a warehouse first. So we'll put the goods in a warehouse and then later on we can clear them for home consumption. Means after some time you can clear them for home consumption. Maybe 6, 8 months, 9 months. Okay. Now, when you are clearing it for home consumption directly from the port, you have to file bill of entry. The document is called as bill of entry. So this is called as bill of entry, BOE in short, bill of entry for home consumption. The duty will be assessed. Now a lot of sections are involved there. Section 46 is about bill of entry. Then assessment sections are section 17 and 18, which we are going to study in detail in time to come. Then after the assessment is done, you have to pay the duty. So payment is under 47. So 46 is bill of entry, 47 is payment. In between these two are 17, 18 assessment sections. Okay, so you file bill of entry, assessment is done, you pay the duty, and then the goods are allowed to be cleared. Means taken home, taken to your wherever you live in India. Second option is putting them in a warehouse. So here we will file bill of entry for warehousing. Similar bill of entry is there, but the only difference in this is that when the assessment is done here on this bill of entry, the duty, total duty which is assessed, which includes basic customs duty and all other duties taken together, which are assessed here, are not to be paid. Here the duty is paid, here it is not paid right now, but you only file a bond. Bond means an undertaking that you give that I undertake to pay this duty whenever demanded. I am not paying it right now, I will pay it. I undertake to pay. So you file a bond. Once you file a bond, the goods will be allowed to be stored in a warehouse. Okay. Once the goods go into the warehouse, they are non-duty paid goods. Understand? They are yet, duty is still payable, not paid. Okay. We'll keep the goods in warehouse for the time that we like. Of course, there is a maximum time of warehousing also that we'll study in a whole chapter called as warehousing. Then finally you will go one day and you will want to clear the goods. So you will file another bill of entry here for clearance from warehouse. Okay, for clearance from warehouse. Then the duty is assessed and it is to be paid. So now the duty which is assessed as per the rate prevailing, the rate of duty prevailing at this point of time. This duty was assessed at the rate prevailing at this point of time. For example, the goods were, this bill of entry is filed on 7th of January. So the duty prevailing on 7th January may be at 12%. So you have assessed this duty at 12%, BCD rate and other rates, all the other duties that are applicable. Then you file a bond, goods are stored in warehouse. Then when you file this bill of entry for removal, suppose on this day the rate is 14%, this duty is assessed at 14%. This is the final duty. This is, you can say, for the time being, just to determine the bond, but this is the actual duty. Now you have to pay it, and after payment the goods will be allowed to be cleared from the warehouse. And then there are interest provisions also. If you store the goods for a long period, you will be charged with interest. There is some interest-free period. Beyond that, you'll have to pay interest. Now, all those things we'll study in detail, so don't worry about those things right now. So this is the concept of warehousing. Okay. Now this is as far as the rate of duty is concerned, but what about value? Second point is value. What is the value on which the duty will be charged? So here, when you will file this bill of entry, the value will be the transaction value. Transaction value or the tariff value, as the case may be, whatever is applicable to our goods. Okay. So here we'll take the transaction value. Transaction value basically means our import price. Our import price. Okay. The actual import price. So for example, my transaction value was 2 lakh rupees, means I have imported the goods at an invoice of 2 lakhs, and that is the amount that I have paid. So 2 lakhs becomes the transaction value. On 2 lakh, this duty is assessed here at 12%. I file a bond, goods go into the warehouse. When I will clear the goods from the warehouse, what will be taken as value? Because quite time has lapsed, some time has lapsed, and the value, international price of these goods may change, right? So when I imported the goods, they were at 2 lakhs. But after 3-4 months, when I am clearing from the warehouse, the market value of these goods might have gone up or might have come down. Are we going to revalue it, or we'll take value as 2 lakhs only? So the point is that if I myself am going to remove the goods from the warehouse, value will be taken same, that is 2 lakhs, no problem. This is when the person who has imported the goods and has warehoused them clears it later on. Because transaction value means amount paid or payable for the import. I have paid 2 lakhs, so value will remain same. Even if I remove after 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or 10 months, value will remain same, that is 2 lakhs. Duty rate may change, but value will remain same. Understood up till here? Very good. So this is as far as I am concerned. One who has imported goods, put them in warehouse and wants to clear them at a later point of time. Okay, simple, great. Now comes a point which we are going to study, that I, Farooq Haq, who has imported the goods into India and have put them in a warehouse, might sell off the goods in the warehouse. Now you'll ask me a question, sir, is it allowed? Yes, absolutely allowed. You can sell off your goods while they are in the warehouse. So what I do, I imported the goods at 2 lakhs. Okay. So now the second point. Importer, Farooq Haq. Transaction value of import 2 lakhs. Put the goods in warehouse. But what I do is I sell off these goods to some person at 3 lakhs, because the market values may go up, as I told you. The market value is increased. So I sell off the goods without clearance. Without clearance, I can sell off the goods while they are in the warehouse. How do I sell? By transferring the document of title. See, I haven't yet taken the possession. I haven't paid the duty, so I don't have possession of goods. Possession is with the warehouse keeper. But I have that bill of lading, the document of title. So I can sell off document of title. Now this point you have already studied, you know where? In your CPT, Sale of Goods Act. Remember, you can sell the goods by transferring document of title, right? Remember? Yes, very good. So what I do is I sell off the document of title to the goods for say 3 lakhs. So if I sell off the goods at 3 lakhs, then the other person to whom I have sold the goods will clear them later on. Then he goes for clearance, he files the bill of entry for clearance. So when duty will be assessed in his hands, what will be taken as the value of the goods? My original transaction value at which I have imported the goods, the invoice at which I imported the goods at 2 lakhs, or this 3 lakhs at which he has purchased the goods, what will be taken as the value? That is the question, right? What will be the value for him? Of course, the rate of duty will be the rate prevailing when he files his bill of entry. That is simple. But what will be the value for him? So let's see what the section says. So section 3 subsection 8a, these sections are of Customs Tariff Act. Okay, Customs Tariff Act. So it says the value of such goods for the purpose of calculating integrated tax shall be. Now this is in the hands of the other person. This is in the hands of the other person, means you. I have sold the goods to you. So what is the value in your hands? Where the whole of the goods, whatever goods I had imported, I have sold it to you, is sold, the value determined under subsection 8. Subsection 8 means the transaction value of Farooq Haq, the first person who has imported the goods, or the transaction value of such goods. This transaction value means the sale price, or you can say the purchase price. For me the sale price, for you the purchase price at which you purchase the goods, whichever is higher. Means in our example, if you see, I imported the goods at transaction value of 2 lakhs. So this transaction value or this price at which you purchase the goods, the transaction value of sale by Farooq Haq to other person, whichever is higher. So 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs, whichever is higher, 3 lakhs. So for you the value will be 3 lakhs. So when you file the bill of entry for clearance later on, you will have to show the value as 3 lakh rupees. Or if suppose the market prices have gone down, I imported the goods at 2 lakhs, market price have gone down, I sell it to you at 1,60,000 only, 160. So if this is 160 and this is 2 lakhs only, then what will be the value in your hands? Then the value will be 2 lakhs, whichever is higher, the original transaction value of imported goods or this transaction value, means the price at which I sell to you, whichever is higher. So 2 or 3, 3, and 2 or 160, 2. Understood? So government says, head I win, tail you lose. So government is putting a coin in the air and it says, head I win, tail you lose. So if you buy at a lesser price, government says, we will not accept this price, we want duty on full 2 lakhs. But if you purchase at a higher price, then government says, we want tax on that higher price. Interesting. Okay, so this is for whole. And then second point says that where any part of the goods is sold, suppose if I import 10,000 kgs and I sell only 4,000 kgs to you, then also the concept will remain same. Only thing we are going to do is take proportionate value. Simple. The proportionate value of the goods determined under clause 8, subsection 8, or the transaction value, means the purchase price for you, the purchase price, whichever is higher. Means if I have imported, say, how much? 10,000 units at 10 lakhs and I am selling 4,000 units to you. So we will take transaction value of 4,000 units, proportionate amount. So subsection 8, because I have imported full, so we will take proportionate transaction value, or this transaction value means at which I sell to you. So I am selling only 4,000 units to you. So this is the whole price. This is proportionate, this is full. And then compare the two, whichever is higher. Very simple. Simple mathematics. Okay. Then provided that where the whole of the warehouse goods or any part thereof are sold more than once. Now if I sell to you and you sell to third person and he sells to another person and he sells to another person, if there are multiple sales before clearance. Okay. Now one point you are understanding or not? Who is going to pay the duty? If I import the goods and I sell it off to you, will I pay the import duty? No. I will not pay. Import duty is paid by the person who clears the goods. Important point to be noted. Huh? The seller doesn't pay this duty. Duty is to be paid by the person who clears the goods finally. One who clears the goods ultimately is going to pay the duty. Understand? Okay. So what it says, that if the sale takes place more than once before such clearance for home consumption or export, the transaction value of the last such transaction shall be transaction value for the purpose of clause A or B. So the last purchase price will be considered. Okay. And provided further that in respect of warehouse goods which remain unsold, means we are again talking about the original person Farooq Haq. I have imported 10,000 units, I sell 4,000 to you. So 6,000 remains with me, which I will clear later on. So what will be the value of those 6,000 units? That will be my original transaction value at which I have imported the goods, right? Determined under subsection 8. That's it. Determined under subsection 8. Proportionate value of the remaining goods determined under subsection 8 means the original transaction value of imported goods. And for the purpose of this subsection, the expression transaction value in respect of warehouse goods means the amount paid or payable as consideration for the sale of such goods. That is what I have explained to you. This transaction value which is written here, the transaction value of the last. So this transaction value means the sale or purchase price, right? From my angle it is sale price, from your angle it is purchase price. So let us write down this also. Let me explain this. If there are multiple sales, means importer is Farooq Haq. Okay. So Farooq Haq sells to A, B, AB sells to CD, CD sells to EF, and EF goes for clearance of goods. Now FH has imported at original transaction value under section 14(1) of 2 lakhs. Then he sold to AB at 6 lakhs. AB sold to CD at 7,20,000 and CD sold to EF for 8 lakhs. So this 8 lakh will be considered as the transaction value, last transaction value, or the original import price. This is the amount determined under subsection 8 for the original importer. So this 2 lakhs will be compared with this 8 lakhs and will take whichever is higher. Means for him the value will be 8 lakhs. The last purchase price, or you can say the last sale price. FH sells to AB at 6 lakhs, AB sells to CD 720 and CD sells to EF at 8 lakhs. So 2 lakh will be compared with 8 lakhs and will take whichever is higher. And if it is part, then we'll take proportionate amounts. Simple. Understood? Very simple. And there is an exemption that goods imported by developer or says unit, developer of says, it should be developer of says or unit in says. Okay, they are exempt from this whole integrated tax. No integrated tax. So for developer of says or unit in says, whatever goods they import into India, they will not be liable to integrated tax. Completely exempt. They will be liable to pay the BCD, the basic customs duty, but not integrated tax. Okay. Then goods and service tax compensation says, GST compensation says, which is absolutely similar to integrated tax. Only thing that if the goods in India are liable to integrated tax as well as cess, then we'll countervail both. But normally very few goods are there which are chargeable with this cess. So if those goods are imported into India, then that cess will also be countervailed in the similar fashion. That if cess is applicable on Indian supply, it will also be charged on import, and all the other points remain same. And the valuation here is done as per subsection 10 or 10A, which is similar to 8 and 8A, absolutely similar. So basically you don't have to study this, it is absolutely similar. 10A is applicable in case of sale in the warehouse. If one person sells the goods to another person in warehouse and then he clears, or there are multiple sales and then there is clearance. So we'll compare the original import value and the resale price, whichever is higher. So all these points are same, you don't have to study. Then comes to next duty is NCCD. NCCD stands for National Calamity Contingent Duty, right there. National Calamity Contingent Duty. Now this duty is charged to raise money, rather to create a reserve for national calamities. There are a lot of calamities that occur here and there: flood, typhoon, hurricane, volcano. Volcano? No, we don't see volcano in India, but earthquakes and this and that. So government needs funds now to provide relief in such cases. So for that purpose they have set up this fund and they have charged this duty called as National Calamity Contingent Duty. This was originally imposed in 2001 after the Gujarat earthquake. Now you must not be aware because I don't know you were born in 2001 or not. Of course you were, but you would be very small kid at that time, 3-4 years. So you might not have felt that earthquake, but it was a big earthquake in Gujarat. And after that this duty was imposed and it still continues. No need to study it. It is levied on pan masala, chewing tobacco and cigarettes, polyester yarn, vehicles, petroleum products, etc. Only on few goods, ranging from 1% to 45% in different situations. That's it, but you just have to remember the word NCCD, National Calamity Contingent Duty. Then there is export duty. Export duty also is very simple. It is levied on very few products like hides, skins and leather, snake skin hides and fur lamb skins. Only a few products of leather industry. Otherwise there is no export duty on any other product for the time being, because we want to promote exports, right? Great. The next is social welfare surcharge. Earlier there was a cess called as education cess and higher secondary education cess. Two types of cess were imposed earlier on, aggregated to 3%, 1 and 2%, so aggregate 3%. That has been abolished and replaced by, not abolished in the sense of exempted, no, that old has been converted into new, and new is called as social welfare surcharge. In small we'll call it as SWS, okay, initials SWS. Social welfare surcharge is now charged and the rate has gone up to 10%. Earlier those cesses were there for 3%. Now the social welfare surcharge will be 10%. And what is the purpose of levy? See, it is given there. SWS is levied on goods specified in the first schedule to Customs Tariff Act, that is the list of import goods, being goods imported into India. Its purpose is to fulfill the commitment of the government to provide and finance education, health and social security. So we are collecting this money for these three purposes: for providing education, financing health, government health schemes, and social security expenses which are incurred by the government, like on Aadhaar card and so on and so forth. All social security measures. The rate is 10% on the aggregate of duties, taxes and cesses which are levied and collected by the central government under section 12 of the Customs Act 1962, and any sum chargeable on goods under any other law for the timing in force. Means this is similar to integrated tax. Transaction value is not considered here. Social welfare surcharge is on taxes only. It is not on original value of the goods. Integrated tax is on value plus taxes. Social welfare surcharge is only on taxes. Okay, only on tax. So this is 10% of taxes. Which taxes? So first it says BCD and all other taxes which are levied in the name of customs, but not including. Then it gives exceptions. So these 4 items are those taxes on which social welfare surcharge will not be imposed. Safeguard duty, that we'll see in the next lecture. Countervailing duty under section 9. Basically all the types of auxiliary duties. These are called as auxiliary duties. You'll understand all these points. Right now you just remember the names. Safeguard duty, countervailing duty, anti-dumping duty and the social welfare surcharge itself. And there are further exemptions. Notification number 13 by 2018 says SWS will not be levied on integrated tax and GST compensation says. So SWS will not be imposed on integrated tax. But will integrated tax be imposed on SWS? Yes. So SWS is to be added first and then integrated tax is added at the last, and SWS will be included in value for the purpose of integrated tax. Means integrated tax is imposed on SWS, but SWS is not imposed on integrated tax. Don't worry, we'll see one problem, you'll understand the whole concept. And second point says goods which were hitherto means up till now, exempted from education cess will continue to be exempt from this surcharge also. So there were many notifications exempting education cess on various kinds of goods. So all those goods which were exempt from education cess will continue to remain exempt from social welfare surcharge. In addition, certain specified goods attract this surcharge at the rate of 3% instead of 10%. So what happened was that, look, earlier there was cess, education cess and secondary cess, so aggregating to 3%. Education cess was 1%, which was collected by the government to finance primary education in India, and 2% secondary and higher secondary education cess was also 1 in 2 or 2 and 1, whatever. Now they have abolished it and replaced by SWS, but SWS is 10%. So there will be a big burden. Goods will become costlier. So a lot of industries complained to the government that this is becoming too costly. So then government issued an exemption notification. It's a long exemption notification giving hundreds of items where this SWS will not be charged at 10% but will be charged only at 3%. So government has maintained status quo. Just the name has changed. Education cess has been replaced by SWS. The rate remains same, 3% for number of goods. There's a long list. Now you'll ask me, sir, do we have to remember that list? No. When question comes in the exam, practical question, calculation of tax question, they will mention there SWS chargeable on these goods at 10% or SWS chargeable at 3%. Okay, so you don't have to worry about it. Then social welfare surcharge on imported goods shall be in addition to any other duty of customs or tax or cess chargeable on such goods under the Customs Act or any other law for the timing in force. Obviously, this is in addition to, means it is not replacing the basic custom duty. It is in addition to basic custom duty. And the provisions of the Customs Act 1962 and the rules and regulations made thereunder, including those relating to assessment, non-levy means exemption, non-levy short levy refunds, exemptions, interest, appeals, offences, penalties, etc., means the whole Customs Act will apply to social welfare surcharge also. It is nothing but a type of custom duty only. So all the laws and regulations which apply to custom duty will apply to social welfare surcharge also in the same manner, mutatis mutandis. Then another cess has been inserted by Finance Act 2018, and that is called as Road and Infrastructure Cess. As the name suggests, what is the purpose of this cess? To collect money for financing the infrastructure development and the road development in India, right? So that is also levied, and this cess will also be in addition to the duty of custom chargeable. And the second provision is also same, that whatever provisions are there for the Customs Act will apply to this cess also. And right now this is imposed on motor spirit, that is petrol, at rupees 8 per litre. 8 per litre. So tomorrow when you go to refill your motorcycle or your car, just imagine 8 rupees per litre you are paying as road and infrastructure cess. And on high speed diesel oil imported into India, 8 rupees per litre. So it is on petrol and diesel basically. Now see the sample calculations. So now you'll understand how to calculate all these taxes. It's very simple. Different scenarios are given there. First is where product attracts IGST but no CVD. So there is no CVD, and this is the normal situation because CVD means CVD of excise, the old one, because now the excise has been abolished and replaced by the goods and service tax. So earlier we used to countervail excise, now we are countervailing IGST. Okay. So assessable value, if say is 1 lakh, first you will charge the BCD. These are hypothetical rates. Suppose if it is chargeable, BCD is chargeable at 10%, so we will first charge the BCD on the assessable value. This assessable value is under section 14 of Customs Act, which can be transaction value or it can be tariff value. If tariff values are fixed, then it will be tariff value. If no, then transaction value of imported goods. The first duty that you add is the BCD, basic customs duty. Suppose it is 10%, so it will be charged 10% of A. So it will come 10,000. Then you will apply SWS, social welfare surcharge, at 10%. If nothing is given, we will take 10%. Okay. If it is given 3%, then we will take 3. If nothing is given, we will take 10%. And if nothing is given, no information is given about SWS, still you add because it is compulsory. So if only BCD rate is given in the question, SWS is silent, still you will add SWS at the rate of 10%. Okay, always. So we'll add SWS. This will be 10% of basic custom duty. So SWS is on tax, so it will be 10% of BCD. So 10,000 into 10%, 1,000. Okay, so this is on this. Then IGST will be on assessable value plus all customs duties that are chargeable. So that will mean BCD and SWS also. So this plus this plus this A plus B plus C will be charged further at 12%. So this 12% is on A plus B plus C, means 10,000 plus 1 lakh plus 10,000 plus 1,000, 1 lakh 11,000. So this is 12% of 1 lakh 11,000, 13,330. So total customs duties will be all of these taken together. 3 duties taken together will be the total customs duties. 10,000 plus 1,000, 11,000, 11,000 plus 13,320 is 24,320. And effective rate is also given, though nobody asks what is effective rate, but effective rate means total customs duties put together, aggregate on transaction value. So if my assessable value is 1 lakh, and the total duty I am paying 24,320. So what will be my effective rate? 24.32. That is this total duty compared with the import price gives us the effective rate. Okay. Then second, where product does not attract CVD but attract IGST as well as compensation cess. So there is IGST as well as compensation cess. Then what to do? Nothing. It will remain same. Only thing is, apart from IGST, we will also charge the compensation cess. So first we'll take the assessable value and add BCD. On BCD we will charge SWS. So till here it remains the same. Then I will charge IGST on A plus B plus C. So these three put together, on that IGST, if suppose it is 12%, then 12%. And then compensation cess, if say it is 10%, it will also be of these three only. Assessable value plus BCD plus SWS. So for charging IGST, you will not include the compensation cess, and for charging compensation cess, you will not include IGST or compensation cess. So A plus B plus C will be charged at 12% IGST and 10% compensation cess. And then you add all these four, 10 plus 1 plus 13, 320 plus 11, 100. So this will give you the total duties payable. And if you compare it with the assessable value, you will get the effective rate. Getting it? Excellent. So first BCD, then the other duties, other custom duty which are leviable, all the other custom duties. Then finally you will add the surcharge, social welfare surcharge, and then on the total you will charge integrated tax. Next question is case 3, where product attracts both CVD and IGST. Now this is not practically applicable, but theoretical point is given there. That if both are there, then how will you calculate? But practically when IGST is there, the excise is not there. When excise is there, the IGST is not there. So this may not come in practical scenario, but theoretically yes. So let's see. First you add the BCD, then you add CVD. CVD at 12% of A plus B. CVD of excise was also chargeable on value plus other taxes. Value plus BCD. So that will give us 13,200. A plus B. Okay. 12% of A plus B means value plus BCD. Then SWS. SWS will be only on taxes. So there are two taxes here, BCD and CVD. So take these two taxes, and on them means on 23,200 you calculate SWS at 10%. So 10% is of B and C, only taxes. But then IGST will be on assessable value plus all taxes put together, means A plus B plus C plus D. IGST 12% of A plus B plus C plus D, and then total duty and effective rate of tax. And the last one is that where all taxes are chargeable, CVD as well as IGST as well as compensation cess. That also is simple. First BCD, then CVD. CVD will be on assessable value plus BCD. Then SWS, social welfare surcharge, which will be on taxes only. Then IGST on all the four. IGST, and similarly compensation cess on all the four items put together. So that's how you calculate.